Here at Be Freaking Awesome, we believe that life is too short to be anything less than extraordinary. Join us as we explore what it means to live authentically, grow continuously, and have a blast while doing it. Let's get started. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Be Freaking Awesome. I'm one of your hosts, Sami here with Angela Belford, and today we are going to be having a conversation about something that we think is really important when it comes to living a freaking awesome life. We talk a lot about being intentional, living on purpose, and what can you do to be freaking awesome? And sometimes to be freaking awesome, that requires going a little bit under the surface, maybe looking at things that are a little bit less than pleasant at times, looking at things that may not feel freaking awesome. But when we avoid them, we definitely avoid all that life has to offer. And so today we're going to be having a conversation about grief and the impact of that on our lives and all of the things. And we've got a very special guest with us today, Jody LaVoie. And we are going to be talking about her company that she's founded and the story and her journey through grief. And I'm really excited to get to be sharing this conversation with you guys. But before we get too far into it, before I go off track on a big long monologue, Jody, why don't you take a moment to just introduce yourself to people listening, people who may not know who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for having me, Sami and Angela. Everybody, I'm Jody LaVoie. I live outside of Chicago and I am a grief expert, and I'm here to change the way everybody thinks about grief and how you can talk about grief and support those in grief. And no, I did not go to college to study grief. And I certainly wish that my personal journey didn't take me on this path that's led me to be in the grief space. And today I work one-on-one with widows via Zoom to help them find their new path to be freaking awesome again. And then I work with companies, their managers and employees, so they can understand grief and help each other through grief.
I love that. I think it's interesting you said you didn't study it in college. I feel like that would be just like a super non-sexy major to be like, oh, I'm majoring in grief. And everyone would be like, oh, I look at the time. I've got somewhere to be. Like maybe we pass on those conversations.
Those party conversations. So what do you do? Oh, I'm in the grief space. Usually people go, or, and then they might take a few steps back because they're like, oh, I don't want to talk about this. Or they're like, that's really rewarding and important work. So
that's awesome.
That's so fun.
I feel like we should print you a certificate, the diploma from the School of Life has issued your master's degree here in grief, which we'll get into in just a few minutes. I'm excited to have Jody because I actually want to use this as a moment to remind people things to do. About 10 years ago, I participated in a major speech competition, and I was blessed with a coach who heard the competition speech and said, I want to coach you. And in 10 years time, I had not gotten to see him. And I had an opportunity to be back in Las Vegas this year. And I was like, can we have coffee? And he was like, yes, we can. And he's like crazy busy. And anyway, his name's Darren LaCroix. I want to give him a shout out because he's been amazing. And I had an opportunity to tell him what an impact he made on my life. And then as we're just catching up over coffee, he starts sharing about how he had just been at this event and he was this one story that really had stuck with him. And he shared Jody's story. And instantly I was like, I have to have her on my podcast. We are fanatical about grief here. We are absolutely believe that the only way, not the only way, I guess, but one of the top 5 character traits you need and things you need to have in your life when it comes to having a freaking awesome life is learning to tango with grief. And so I'm delighted that you're here, and it feels like this just warm full circle moment with Darren and both of us being friends. So why don't you take a moment and tell us just a little bit more about that story that is shared so frequently, I guess, now. Yeah. I want you to share your story. And also, I feel like there's a little bit of a trigger warning. It's a pretty intense story. So just be aware as if you're rolling down the road, just be prepared that it's a pretty intense story. So you need to pause, I want to make sure our listeners are prepared for that. So go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Angela. And I appreciate the warning up front too, because my story does catch people by surprise. So 10 years ago, I received a knock on the door that changed my life forever. It was like beautiful summer day. I just get back from a run. My kids are here and they're young at like 9, 12, and 15. And the knock on the door happens and I look through the people and it's a police officer.
Mm.
And I'm like, and actually that didn't even faze me, which is kind of weird because I thought, well, maybe my alarm was wonky or something. I open the door and he tells me that my husband has been gravely injured. And I'm like, okay, what happened? What happened? He wouldn't tell me anything. And so he said, just call this number. So I closed the door because he wasn't giving me any news. So I called the number and it's a police officer in Chicago. And he just tells me, he asked me if I could get a ride downtown. I'm like, what happened? Your husband is in surgery. What happened? He wouldn't tell me. So I, of course, said, yeah, my dad will be here. He'll give me a ride downtown. Hung up the phone. 2 minutes later, the press calls me and they say, your husband has been shot at work. Would you like to comment? Yeah. And I'm like, no comment. I had no idea what to say. It's like one of those movie moments of, I'm not going to go press, tell me more. But I mean, it just took my breath away. What happened was 3 days prior, my husband had demoted an employee at work. He had founded a large supply chain technology business in downtown Chicago. And then 3 days later, this employee brought a gun to work and he shot my husband and then he killed himself on the spot. And so it was, I mean, surreal, I guess is the only word to really say. I'm driving downtown Chicago with my dad. People are calling me, like my friends that I haven't even called, who heard this news because it's all over the news. There's helicopters hovering over downtown Chicago because that is the scene of where this happened. I pull up to the hospital and there's press outside and it was just crazy. And I left my girls at home and my mom came and took care of them. And I didn't even get to tell them about their dad. They Googled it, and as kids do. And that's how they found. Obviously, I did tell them in time, but I was trying to process everything. Yeah. And so this occurred at work. He did not pass away right away, but he never regained consciousness. And 3 months later, he did pass away. I took over running the business. I was a stay-at-home mom, and then I'm in charge of this big business, which I'd never done before. That was terrifying. But it was one of those moments where I didn't even question. I'm like, well, that was our plan. If something happens to him, I jump in, and that's what I do, and figure it out. And so I figured it out, ladies.
Wow.
That's a whole lot.
That's a whole lot.
And I feel like, I don't know, there's a part of this that my first reaction is just, I feel really bad that nobody was able to be, the police on the scene weren't able to give you the information in a way to help you receive that and process that before you got bombarded. And I think that I'm sure that they're less equipped and trained on and weren't sure how to tell you. And also in that uncertainty of sharing hard news, ended up you getting, really blindsided from a call from the press with the news. Like,
yeah.
Oh my gosh, like that's so much harder when you know something's wrong and no one will tell you. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And
Dang.
I have no idea. I have never looked into it, but maybe that's the protocol that police have to use. Maybe they can't tell you exactly what happened. I don't know. And my initial thought was, well, maybe he got hit by a car walking downtown to an appointment or something, because he loved to walk around downtown. So that kind of made sense. And then oddly, when I got that your husband has been shot at work, like it didn't surprised me, and I don't know why my brain went there. We thought after this gentleman received the news, my husband and he talked every day, and they were getting better, and it felt like he was going to accept this new role in the business. He was not getting laid off. His salary wasn't changing. It was just a new role, and well, he didn't.
So you took over running the company, and how long did you run the company
Almost
before?
3 years, and so
Okay.
I was the official title is chairman, very active chairman because my husband and I were the largest shareholders, and we had friends and family that had all invested in the business as well, and that was a lot. So, if something had happened to the business and it went south, like 70% of our money was in the company, like our personal money.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was a lot, and frankly, I didn't even really think about that at the time, but it was a lot of pressure. Like, not only,
Yeah.
this was my husband's dream and his baby, our 4th child, and I didn't want anything to happen to it, but I certainly didn't wanna let our shareholders down, my girls down, the employees and their families. There were 65 employees, and they all loved my husband, and
Mm,
thank goodness every single one of them was committed to building the business back up, and
mm,
I couldn't have done it without all of them for sure. So,
yeah. So basically, it sounds like you did what our body kind of is programmed to do, is shift into survival mode. At that moment,
100%.
there's no be freaking awesome. This is survival mode, and you were in survival mode for sounds like about 3 years.
Yeah.
You and I visited a little bit before, so know, not being insensitive to the story. I just and then what you exited the business, the business sold, right? Then
Yes.
what'd you do?
I took a year off.
Praise the
Uh,
Lord. What
exactly.
a
I'm like, I just needed to breathe. And because literally I felt like I couldn't breathe for 3 years. It
yeah.
felt like I'm on a treadmill, and literally my heart was skipping beats, and I was stressed out and gaining weight and all the things. And I just needed to figure out what I wanted to do next and take care of myself. And yes, I had started grieving, of course, but I felt like I had put everybody else first. The business, my family, my girls, everything, and I needed some time to take care of me. So,
Did you go into that year knowing it would be 1 year, or did you go into it being like, "I'm gonna take time off, we'll see
I
what
don't know how
happens,"
long.
like, I don't know how long?
yeah, I guess I did not put a time frame to it. I knew
Good.
there would be an end because that is the person I am. I am a kind of move
Mhm.
forward, goal-oriented person. But it really was a year of rebuilding. I went to a widow retreat and I met
Mm.
these amazing women, and it was put on by a woman who really believes, and I concur, fitness and exercise and getting out and moving your body is such a great healing tool. And so I went to her retreat, and that was great. And especially to meet other widows and other grievers. And I did have a really great widow group at home that was not organized. It was just, 8 ladies who were also widows in my town, and when they heard that I was in that position, they reached out to me and we met regularly, and that
Mm.
was a godsend because, there's a lot that happens and a lot that you question about yourself and decisions and what do I do, and this just happened, and to throw those questions out to others that have walked that path was really helpful.
Wow. Okay. So we've learned a lot already. We've learned that sometimes it's okay if you have to do survival mode.
Mhm.
Sometimes you have to pause. And well, it sounds like I'm going to stop there because even in survival mode, you started building community.
Yeah.
because we cannot actually do this alone. We all think we can. We all want to do this alone, but we can't actually do this alone. And it did sound like a humongous community. We don't need 75 people, but man, a core group
Yeah.
of
And not only, of course I had my widow friends, but I was a stay-at-home mom. So I didn't
Mm,
have a professional network. I didn't have a
mm.
LinkedIn. I didn't have any of that. So I needed and wanted to build a professional network because I'm supposed to know how to run a business. And so I joined a professional group that really helped me, Young Presidents Organization. And that's how I met Darren because I did a talk for them and they hired Darren LaCroix to be the speaker coach. And wow, that was transformational. So anyway, I have a really great professional group too.
I think so much of the, the literature and the internet wisdom, whatever you want to call it, is like, oh, you got to take care of you and take time for yourself and self care and all of those things. And I think there's times where we disregard that, and just totally blow it off because we are in survival mode. And I think there's an element where it's like, I kind of want to give permission. Sometimes it's okay to be in survival mode. I've had to say that to people, even over the last couple of years of my journey of being okay with emotions. And I'm like, survival mode is okay for a season. You may just need to get through it. And if you got, I joke all the time. I'm like, which religious platitude do you need? Let go and let God, or when you get to the end of the rope, tie a knot and hold on, because it's kind of the joke of like, I don't know, whatever you need today, right? But it's okay to be in survival mode for a while. You
Yeah.
can't stay there permanently.
Mhm.
Get some community, and then also eventually you do have to actually take care of yourself
Oh, you
and
do.
take some time to really kind of figure out. So is it during that year that you actually kind of started figuring out what you wanted to do next, or how did that happen?
Yes. So first I decided to renovate my house. um, because
Sure.
it felt heavy, and I was
Mm.
tired of feeling heavy. Like, our living room was burgundy, which was in style back then, but I would come in the front door and I literally felt like wah, 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 and getting smaller. And so I wanted lighter and brighter and girly, and and I think it was like this metaphor to figuring out what this new life was going to be on my terms.
Mm.
And I really like that because I got to pick all this stuff, all the colors, and I have kind of a glammy couch and it's silver, and it just makes me happy. And so to do even little things like that that make you happy, and it's like a little thing here and a little thing here and a little thing here, and it all just kind of builds. And then you're like, wow, look at what I look at what I did little by little. So
Yeah. Yeah, you say that your superpower is rebuilding life on your own terms, and you literally rebuilt, renovated that interior space. I think that is fantastic. So you renovate your house and you get to where you're like, I love this. I'm happy. I have joy. How'd you get to the next
yeah,
step?
I don't think you ever go, I'm done.
No,
Sure.
no,
And
no, no, no.
yeah,
I have joy, and what's the
I'm
next
a
step?
work in
For
progress.
sure. I
Absolutely.
agree with that
But I
100%.
absolutely got to a place that wasn't as heavy as it was, certainly. Um, Grief doesn't end, but
Mhm.
it gets lighter, and you learn how to live with it, meaning it's a part of your heart and your life, but it doesn't need to weigh you down forever.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I did the renovation and then I'm like, well, still young. I still need to work. How do I want to spend my professional life and what do I want that to look like? And I'm a little type A, ladies. Less type A now after loss for sure, because I certainly let a lot of things slide. But I'm definitely like a start at the beginning kind of gal. Like in it, I have cookbooks and I like to read the introduction. Like, what was the story behind them creating the cookbook? And so I'm
Oh,
not a
you're the
dive into
reason they
the
write
recipe
those.
kind of thing. So anyway, so I hired a coach to help me start from the beginning. Like, how do I figure out what I want to do with the rest of my life professionally? And so I did some reading, we had conversations, and I knew that I really like working with women and women in the workplace. I really wanted to take my grief experience and and learn more and get educated more on that so I could help women in the workplace who are grieving. And so that's really where I first started. And I went back to school and I got my coaching certification. And I work one on one with widows via Zoom, widows in all phases. I've had a widow come to me before loss because
Mm.
grief doesn't just happen the day they die. Sometimes when there's a terminal diagnosis, even though you have so much hope, there you're still starting to grieve a little bit. And then sometimes it's women who are 5 years down the road and are maybe hit another bump that brought some things up, or maybe they just want a little bit more guidance about where to go in their lives.
I think
So,
that
have you
that
did
makes a lot of sense. Oh, go ahead. I was like, even the preemptive grief, when you have the terminal illness. Angela, I know one of your really dear friends, Nathan, who was on the podcast,
Yeah.
walking with his wife Chrissy, and that they, he told he had 6 months to live, and then 7 years later is when he passed away. And there's blessing and beauty in that additional 7 years that they never thought they'd have. And it also is hard to live with this like ever present anticipatory grief.
Yeah, we did. I was a little bit of kind of just tiny bit of respite care for them so she could get out and go to the gym a couple nights a week or organize if I couldn't other people. And I would come early and she and I would work through the grief recovery handbook. And I think the beautiful thing about the grief recovery handbook is that you have to learn how to grieve, but then also learn how to be with people in grief. And so I had to process some of my grief with it as well. And um, his episode, It's Okay to Die, is actually still our number one episode, or often our number one episode. A couple of
It
times
is.
something will
No, I was
pop
like,
up.
it's
And
still
so,
number one most listened to episode of our podcast.
yeah. And I had, I ended up with this. There was a lot of complexity in his loss because my friend's husband was dying, my friend was dying, and my mom, when I was a kid, died of cancer. And so here I was helping. Part of what I did was help take care of their 10-year-old at the time. Um,
Mm.
when Nathan couldn't take care of him when she was and so I'm helping walk through this with a kid whose dad is dying of cancer, a parent is dying of cancer. And it was one of these situations, just understanding the like Rubik's cube of that grief. And also it was such a strange feeling for me because it's like it's not technically happening to you, like it's not my husband. And I mean, it's not even like this was like a lifelong friendship. I mean, we had met them when Eli was 3 and had just kind of in and out of each other's lives. And when was life was getting intense, we ended up back at the same church. And so it was so fascinating. So I love that you are now working with other people to help them figure out how to be support in that grief
Yes.
process, because I didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't want to make it like, oh, my life is so hard. And yet there was still just this buzzing in the background for that 6 months, 6 or 7 months. And then it's fascinating because I wrote my book in 2023, and in 2024, I walked through that with Nathan and their family. And then a few weeks after his funeral, my aunt who had raised me also had a stroke and helped with her hospice care. And I'm like, well, if you want to test whether or not you actually have learned how to tango with grief, gonna have a whole year. We're gonna like really be in it.
Mm.
And it was it was good. That was that 23? No, it was 23. It was while I was publishing my book. That's right. It wasn't last year. It was 2023. And so it was like, okay, I think I know these dance moves. I think I know this ebb and flow. And I find that the thing I am the most grateful for that season is my capacity to be there for other people in grief. Like when you have to learn to just hold space for whatever somebody has, and if Chrissy looks at me 3 months after and like, no, I'm good. Like we processed. People were like freaking out that she had processed so well, but she's like, we spent 6 months in the grief recovery handbook, where we were pretty in it. And so we were talking about hard stuff, which was also interesting. We would talk about really hard stuff, and then I would go in and be like, hi, Nathan, let's talk. Anyway, so it's I love that you are doing you so you started with widows,
I
and
did.
then what's the transition to getting into the workplace?
Yes. Before I do that though, I
Oh,
want to just pause on what you just said because there's so much
yes.
in
Sorry.
in what you brought up about supporting people in grief. And because people don't know how to do that
They don't.
frequently. And Angela, you did such a beautiful job. And sometimes it's just showing up and being
Yep.
there and listening. That is the best thing you can do for someone. And
Part of the joy was that I got Nathan's permission to be the sassy friend, so I got to say all the morbid humor jokes. So he would text me like, crazy, and I would be like, "Oh," he's like, "I know, I should probably like feel bad," and I go, "Nah, just work it out with Jesus. You'll be there in a couple weeks. Don't worry about it." And so it was also that we had the gift of morbid humor. That
My
was my favorite
favorite
way to get to be with him.
my favorite story of your morbid humor is that one of the last couple of times that he was able to go to church with you, you were standing at the back of the room and there was a
God.
song playing, and the line in the song is, "If I'm not dead, God's not done. If I'm not dead, God's not done." And it like repeats and builds and repeats and builds. And Angela's back there and she's like got soft tears, and then she starts sobbing. And then Nathan comes up next to her and like elbows her and he goes, "Tough song, huh?" And like,
Well, and
oh
I
my
wanted to
gosh.
I remember feeling and going like he was standing next to me when the song started, and I was like, I don't want to make him uncomfortable, and I'm like, no, I'm going to give him the gift of my grief. My friend is going to, and he held me,
Mhm.
and I said my friend is going, and he got to be there for me. It was a very sweet moment, and also I almost punched him in the face when he was like, tough song.
Before we keep going, I want to pause on that moment though, because I was having a conversation literally just last night with somebody that there is a side of grief and sometimes even trauma that is tricky when it didn't happen to you, but you are very close to the situation. You can get impacted by the ripple effects of it. And so my own story and how this impacted me, which is also a little bit hard if you're listening. When I was pregnant with my oldest, I had a close friend at our church that she ended up having a stillborn child. And that trauma is and loss is not one that happened to me. And I also was deeply impacted by that. And I did have a very personal reaction of like, oh my gosh, I am now filled with a lot more anxiety and fear and all of these things. And then it was like, but it's not your loss, so you need to calm down. Like you don't need to feel these things. It's not your problem. It's not your fault. It's not like stop making it about you. And I had a very dear friend at the time who like pulled me aside at one point and was like, "Hey, I just want to let you know, I know that our friend is going through this thing, and I can't imagine the position you must be in being actively pregnant right now and the fear now that that loss could happen to you. And I just want to let you know I see you in that and that that must be hard as well. A separate hard. We're not comparing traumas, we're not comparing grief and loss. That on its own must be hard and I can't imagine what that would be like to go through." And I was so blessed to have that friend who like could see it, name it, and help me give words to say, yes, somebody else is going through an intense loss. And that is impacting me in a different way. Not in the way that I'm going to go and be like, hey, friend who just lost your baby, can you be there for me? This is really hard for me right now that you lost.
Right.
Like, absolutely not. I'm going to go to a different person to lean on for that support. And it the ripple effects of loss and the ripple effects of grief can still affect you, and you are allowed to have those moments as well. Even if you aren't the person who lost your husband or you aren't the person who's facing whatever the moment is, it still impacts you. It gives you the, oh my gosh, what if that had been my husband? I can't imagine my husband getting shot and what would my life look like and all of these things. And that isn't it isn't wrong. I think that where we sometimes get gray and tricky is then when we go to that person to make it all about us. But I think having that
Yes.
reaction in yourself, like that's okay. And that is not bad and wrong and something to like push down and never address. I would recommend just to be a good friend. I wouldn't necessarily unpack that with that person. They already have a lot on their plate going on. There's somebody else in your life, I promise you, probably has the capacity to help be there for you to lean on. Anyway, I just wanted to call that out that yes, Angela, it was not your loss, but also your loss, but your loss for your
Hmm.
friend and all of the complexities of that. And it's just, we need to talk about the
We
person's grief, and it is okay for you to have the grief about the grief.
We did talk actually, Nathan and I talked a lot about that and him being really frustrated with people, like periphery people that barely knew him that were like, "Oh my gosh, I can't imagine that you're," and they're bringing all of their trauma about him dying. And he goes, "Not like the moment that I like got beklempt and, or even," he goes, "even if you wanted to talk to me about what you're feeling," he goes, "that's very different than somebody expecting to dump their emotional load on me." So, very good call out.
Yeah, so much there because it's really hard when somebody comes up to you and they're dumping their things on you and you're going through so much and now you feel like you have to console them. And yes. So,
I
Yeah.
wish there was
So
a
then
nice way to tell people that they are doing that.
that
You know what I
is,
mean?
wouldn't that
Like
be
we need a
really
safe
handy?
word in grief. Um,
So then how to transition us, where can we be better supports at work? How do you help support people within that space at
yes.
work?
So a number of ways. So usually managers are on the front line of if a loss occurs. And I want to throw out there, grief isn't just about death either. It's
yes.
about a change in your life in some way. It could be divorce. It could be a change in your financial situation. It could be the LA fires we had before. And even though that's happening over there to no one you personally know, you're grieving because you have empathy and for what's going on. So grief happens a lot in all of our lives, everyone. But in the case of death, um, the manager gets the call and how that manager can react and be supportive in that moment is so important. And what they say is so important. And just showing your support. I'm so sorry that happened. I'm here to support you with whatever you need. Take the time you need. And
I I
go
think
ahead.
that's really great. It makes me think about when you're talking about it's not just death. I remember sort of early days of COVID in 2020. There was, I think, I don't know that we named it as grief, but I did appreciate we had a lot of times to be like, there is a lot going on and there is a lot happening, and we are having a lot of feelings, whether you've lost somebody, not lost somebody, the loss of normalcy and what does life look
Hmm.
like, your routines, your habits, everything. And I feel like we actually, I know in my work, we did a better job of saying, what do you need? How can we all come in together? There was this collectiveness to it that it was like you were allowed to have a meltdown. And I remember the day before our office closed, and I was standing in my cubicle, and a girl who's in a different department who's in the cubicle next to me. I'm like, how am I going to feed my 2-year-old if I can't get milk and we can't go to the grocery store and there's not milk and everybody's like panic buying milk and I don't want to contribute to the panic, but like also how do I feed my 2-year-old? And she like held my shoulders and she was like, Sammy, go buy milk. Like you are allowed to buy milk, and that is okay if that's what you need right now to like settle your nervous system and to feel a little more secure. Go buy milk. And I was like, you're right, I can buy milk, I am allowed to anyway. And there was just such a like being there for each other. So I had my moments. I was that for somebody else. I was not go buy milk, but it was do the thing to take care of you. That is okay. And seeing each other where we were, allowing us to be in the like who knows. Today I'm fine, tomorrow I'm not fine, the next day I'm great again. Like that all made sense during that time. And then we all kind of started to go back to normal and we all kind of started to be like, okay, well, as long as your work gets done, take care of you. As long as your work gets done, you can, take some time, but don't take too much time. Make sure that all the work's getting done. It was an interesting fade back to life before and
Yeah.
not being as supportive in that grief time. I don't think we were calling it grief, but I think it was. It was a
It
lot
was
of
a
grief.
lot of grief and just thinking about kids that couldn't go to school anymore, and now all of a sudden they're on a screen getting their schooling and their lack of contact with friends, and oh my gosh, and there's so much collective grief back then for sure.
Yeah.
But you brought up something kind of that brought up in my mind timeline.
Mhm.
There's no
Mm.
timeline for grief, people. So many people will be like, geez, it's been 6 months. Why are they still crying? Why are they
Oh my
still
gosh.
doing that? So,
It's
uh,
only been 6 months.
exactly. And even somebody might 6 months might they might be, like, bounced back in their mind that that's great, but somebody else might take a few years. And so comparing grief experiences is not helpful, and us as people, we want to help people, and that's our nature, and to make somebody feel good, and if we can take away their pain, we want to do that. And so when somebody's grieving, an kind of a natural inclination is to say, okay, what can I do? How can I make this better for you? And and that's usually not what a griever needs. They just want you to listen and
Mhm.
or just do something. Just don't ask because they probably don't know.
Thank you.
Just drop
Thank
off the
you.
meal, drop off the rolls of toilet paper. The best gift
Mhm.
somebody ever gave to me was the first day of snow in Chicago. A dad up the street showed up and shoveled my snow. And
Mm.
and for 7 years, he's shoveled my snow because I knew snow was coming that day, and I'm like, "Crud, I've got 3 kids, and I gotta get them to school, and I've gotta get to work, and now I have to start a snowblower, and I don't even know how the heck to do that," and that took so much anxiety off of me to have him do
Mm.
that simple act of kindness. So, even something simple like that. Fix something at their house, mow their lawn, plant a
We
flower.
had they had somebody that just anonymously decorated for Christmas because his the funeral was about 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, and so they came home. We came home one night and there was Christmas lights that were just on the house, and we're like,
Beautiful.
"Does anybody know where these came from?" Nope. I think eventually they figured it out when they came to deinstall them. They finally figured out who had done that. But I think you're right when we say, what can I do? You're putting a lot of mental load on the person that's grieving.
Mhm.
And so I have found, like, even the going to the gym. I had been talking to Nathan and he was like, I'm so afraid something will happen to me and my 10-year-old will have to call 911. I know Chrissy needs to go to the gym. And so I was like, I can alleviate that fear for you and I can be there. And, meals are always a kind of a slam dunk easy. If you're scared about meals, like, man, like laundry detergent and dish detergent and toilet paper still got to be bought. Right. And so I think being okay um, with also recognizing if you're not the person that is the most support for them, right? Like, because there's people that I would love to be there for them, and I know there's other folks that can be. So like if they've got little kids and you show up and there's other people that are talking to them, like, can you entertain the children? Or anyway, I think if we can think about being practical, we also do you find that people are like, oh, I don't want to bother them.
Yeah.
And it's like, keep sending texts keep calling, keep remembering. Like, I just the other day was like, why do I still have Nathan's contact in my phone? And it was because I wanted to keep remembering his birthday so I could check in with his family around his birthday. And so those are the big ones, I think. And I don't think we should be afraid of bothering somebody. Do you agree?
No, and talking about and telling stories about Nathan,
Mm-hmm.
everybody, you really appreciate that as a grieving person because you're hearing somebody else is remembering them, and then
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
to and it might even be a story that you didn't know, and that's really special to hear and to have shared. And I still have people reach out to me and tell me stories of my Steve, and I love that, and I save them. And even if like it's an email, I have a whole folder of like stories for Steve about Steve that I
That's
want to
cool.
print one day and put in a book for my girls. And so those are really beautiful. So I guess if you are out there questioning, should I share a story? Please do. They'll appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
And send
Absolutely.
the text message that just says, "Hey, I'm thinking about you and I'm thinking about your loss. And you don't have to reply back to this, but I just wanted to let you know uh you're not alone and I'm thinking about you." I think that's the sometimes when for me, when I'm expected to respond, that adds more load, it adds more tasks. But the hey, no need to reply. I just wanted to let you know someone's thinking about you and
Mm-hmm.
thinking about this. However long it's been, it you're not gonna I don't think you're gonna re-traumatize somebody by bringing up, "Hey, do you remember that you have a loss?" They remember, I promise you, because I think that's our fear is that we're gonna be like, "Oh, but maybe they're not thinking
What if
about it
they're having a good
today."
day and I'm going to ruin their good day?
I promise you, it's still a part of their life and it's still a part of their story. It's that ever-present piece of it, that loss, whatever that might be, that the death, the loss of the future that you wanted, maybe that's like an infertility journey, maybe that's something different. There's so many things that it's not I, they know. They're thinking about it a lot more than you are, and I don't think you're going to ruin someone's day by just saying, "Hey, I care about you and I want you to know that you're seen in this."
Absolutely. And I love that having it on your calendar. Um, I have this one friend that she calendars like the the death day of Steve and kind of important days. And she reaches out to me still 10 years later. And I so appreciate that. And and
Mhm.
sometimes people will feel like, well, I already said I'm sorry once, so I don't need to say anything again, like check done. Please like periodically keep checking in. That's really important.
I think
Yeah,
that's
because
good.
thinking of you is different than I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No, it's like, no, 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 I'm thinking of you.
Mhm. Yep.
It can be simple. Jody, this is amazing. Tell us something, the parting thoughts, what you'd like to leave our guests with or leave our audience with.
I guess grief doesn't have to be scary. And I think
Mhm.
people feel like it's scary because it's emotional and it's sad and I don't want to make anybody sad or contribute to their sadness. And it's really just about showing up and being present for people when they need it the most, for supporting grievers. And if you yourself are grieving actively now, it there's no right or wrong. However you are feeling is how you need to be feeling today. And tomorrow may be feeling a different way. And today may bring highs and lows and highs and lows and that's okay. And
Mhm.
grief is a journey and it's there because we loved somebody so strongly.
Mm.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much, Jody. Where can people find you? Maybe they're managers, they want to work with you, something, whatever it is, people want to connect with you after this. Where can they do that?
Absolutely. Well, connect with me on LinkedIn, Jody LaVoie. And I do have a couple websites, Widows in the Workplace and The Grief Company. So you can find me there.
Okay. And we'll make sure
Wonderful.
that we put all those links in the notes for you guys so you can find those really easy. We really
Super.
appreciate you guys joining us for the conversation today and being part of this. Hope you guys have taken something away. We'd love to hear what it is. Tell us about your story. Tell us about your tips or tricks related to grief. and how you show up for others or show up for yourself. That would be wonderful. Until next time, we hope you guys go be freaking awesome.